We are now talking to Pro Football Focus NFL reporter Doug Kyed. What's going on, Doug?
Doing well. How are you guys doing?
Well, we're not dancing. I mean, Tyler can't dance. I mean,
That's
he's losing his
I
hair.
can dance.
He's losing his hair.
I can dance.
I mean, you could dance?
I can dance.
What could you dance to? You
Whatever,
like disco
anything.
music?
What?
Could you dance to disco music?
No one from my generation likes disco music.
Are you kidding me? Doug, come on. Do you like disco music?
I would say it's my favorite genre.
So you don't like listening to the Bee Gees? You don't like any of that? I mean,
It's okay.
I mean, you can't dance to it anyways, Tyler, so I don't care what you say. You couldn't dance to hip-hop music, all right? You're losing your hair, all right?
I am losing my hair.
Yes, you are. Anyways, Doug, how are you doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you start working for Pro Football Focus for the NFL?
I covered the Patriots for 8 years at Nesson. Then it was time for something new, so Pro Football Focus was opening up a news division. I was really excited to join the team because I was already friends with a lot of people over there at PFF, and then I've been doing that since about July now. So it's been fun covering the entire league for this entire season plus training camp.
So why don't we get into the Jets? Because obviously they're playing Thursday Night Football. Mike White becomes the story throughout the NFL. Throws 400 yards, 37 for 45. The first quarterback to ever do that in his first game. He's now, his jersey, his football is in the Hall of Fame. It's shining. And the Jet fans say, hey, look, we have the starting quarterback of the future. 26-year-old journeyman, 4-year quarterback from the Cowboys. I mean, what are your thoughts to this whole Mike White thing? And I know anybody that knows anything about football, you know that Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas stamped their name to Zach Wilson. There's no way in hell they're going to let Mike White be the starting quarterback of the future of this organization, no matter how well he plays. But what are your thoughts, Mike White's, what he's done his first week as a starting quarterback for the New York Jets, and where do you see Mike White moving forward with the New York Jets?
It's certainly an interesting situation, and I did think it was kind of funny that Robert Saleh kind of left the door open that Mike White could be the future. We all know that's not the case. It's going to have to be Zach Wilson no matter how players play, but I do think that Mike White looks more comfortable back there than Zach Wilson has, and that's maybe to be expected because Mike White is more of a veteran option than Zach Wilson. He's been in the league since 2018. Zach Wilson just a rookie, but you expect there to be a pretty large talent gap between the second overall pick and a guy who bounced around the league in the last 3 years. I don't know. I thought Mike White looked good in the second half against the Patriots. Obviously, he looked really good last week against the Bengals, and he started off this game hot before injuring his forearm. One thing, he's a restricted free agent after this season. So the Jets will have the option to tag him as a first round, with a first round tender, second round tender, or original round tender. I would expect them to probably slap that original round tender on him, 5th round pick. But that means that another team could trade a 5th round pick for Mike White, which I don't know if he plays well in a few more games this season, isn't out of the realm of possibility since Tyler Heineke just signed a relatively big deal over this offseason.
So the other team in this game, the Indianapolis Colts, probably going to win if Mike White doesn't come back at all, and already up 21-10. And they got, even though they lost on Sunday, they got a glimmer of hope with Derrick Henry now probably out for the season. So the Titans, even though they have a big lead in their division, can you see the Colts kind of gaining ground with this potentially? They have a pretty easy schedule to finish off the season. They got most of the NFC West over with already. So can you see them maybe coming back and stealing the AFC South or even a wild card spot?
It's possible if Carson Wentz plays well down the stretch, but he started off the season hot for Carson Wentz, then that all kind of fell apart last week. I don't know. It's possible just because Derrick Henry, that's a major loss for the Titans. I forgot who said it, but I mean, that's one of the biggest drop-offs that you can have, I'd say, in the league, from losing Henry and now having Adrian Peterson, Dante Foreman, and Jeremy McNichols there at running back. And that whole offense did run through Derrick Henry. It'll be interesting to see how that Titans team looks. I just don't know. It's Carson Wentz, and you know he's good for 1 or 2 big mistakes per game. It definitely doesn't help that the Colts were not able to start this season on a good foot. 3-5. It's not buried, but I don't know. I still probably wouldn't expect them to be playoff bound, even though they will, like you said, likely be 4-5 after this matchup.
Speaking of running, Odell Beckham Jr. is running his way out of Cleveland.
Oh, God.
So
Not surprised.
Obviously, him and the Browns are just working out details on how soon they can get this contract over with, and he can go wherever he wants. Was there a final straw here, or was it just Odell never fit in when he got there?
Well, it certainly hasn't gone well for him since he got to Cleveland. And I'd argue that it really hasn't gone that well for him ever since he signed the big contract overall. But I do think that the comments from LeBron, the comments from Odell Beckham's father, that was pretty clearly the breaking point here, because after that all happened, that's when the Browns told Odell to stay home, and then he hasn't practiced on Wednesday or Thursday. So like you said, it does seem like there's a divorce coming here. It does seem likely that they'll probably just have to waive him at a certain point, because according to NFL rules, you can't suspend a player with pay. It's only working for Deshaun Watson because he's agreed to it. But if Odell Beckham says that he wants to play, then the Browns can't just keep him at home, paying him, but suspending him. So something's going to have to happen here. And like I said, it does seem like he's going to be waived at some point here.
We are talking to Pro Football Focus NFL reporter Doug Kyed. Now, Doug, Von Miller gets traded to the Rams, and everybody at the trade deadline were like, oh my God, the Rams just trade away all their draft picks now. They gave up 2022, I think it was a 2022 second round, 2023 fourth round, or whatever the heck third round that they did. They gave up players. Adding Von Miller to this defense, a top-end defense with obviously one of the best defensive players in the league, if not the best, Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. Is this the team to beat right now in the NFC, now solidifying themselves with a quarterback in the beginning of the season, and now Von Miller?
I think they probably are. They're probably the team to beat overall, but the Buccaneers are right up there with them, because I know that there's been times when they haven't looked quite that dominant, but that was really the case last season as well. And I do think that once the Buccaneers get their secondary rounded back into shape, and that's already starting to happen, Sean Murphy-Bunting was designated to return off of injured reserve. I think the Buccaneers will be really good down the stretch as well. So that's the two-man race that I'm looking at here, is between the Rams and the Bucs. The Rams they're a wagon though. They're going to be a tough team to beat. And like you said, with those top three defenders on that roster, and really they've gone all in. It was, I believe, a 2022 second and a 2022 third. And Von Miller is a free agent after this season. So if he walks in free agency, then they could still get the 23 compensatory fifth round pick. Maybe, making this trade makes it easier for them to re-sign him this offseason, but it could wind up being a half year rental for a second and third round pick. That's a lot to give up. So it's kind of, like I said, yeah, they're kind of pushing all the chips into the middle of the table here.
So let's go to their division rival, who made a trade kind of right before the trade deadline, the Arizona Cardinals. They trade for Zach Ertz. We were arguing it yesterday with one of our callers as well, that what kind of role will he serve? It's an air raid. It's a NFL equivalent to an air raid offense. A lot of wide receivers with Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray. And I was saying how Zach Ertz is probably, even though he isn't the world-class blocker, he's going to be used as that a lot more often. What do you think his role will end up being in this offense?
I think it could be kind of twofold. I do think that he could be used as a blocker. He's experienced at it. Like you said, not the best in the NFL. He's not Gronk out there or anything like that. But he's a willing blocker. But really, he's, at times he's kind of that big slot receiver. So they've got the maneuverability with him where they can kind of do that four wide look with Zach Ertz. They could bring him in at tight end. They could do a lot of things with him. The issue that they're facing right now is that, especially heading into this game, they're pretty banged up. AJ Green on the COVID list. Kyler Murray hasn't practiced the last couple of days. JJ Watt could be out for the season. So there's a lot of moving pieces, especially heading into this week. I wouldn't expect Kyler Murray to be out long term, but it's certainly possible that he could be out this week. Same thing with AJ Green. He should be back before we know it. So it might be a little speed bump for them, but just heading into this week, it's looking a little shaky for them against the 49ers, but long term, as long as that defense can hold up without Watt, they're certainly contenders as well. I just might not put them in that same echelon as the Bucs and the Rams.
Now, obviously, we're talking about the NFC West, so we might as well stay there. Russell Wilson has apparently a 1,000,000% chance of demanding another trade this offseason. Is that any truth to that whatsoever? And if so, where does he want to go?
I mean, I think that just given all of the rumors last year, that it's certainly possible again that those will percolate again. And I think that, one thing that could be interesting is, say, if Odell Beckham Jr. gets waived, and if he clears waivers, which is what everyone expects him to do, what if the Seahawks pick him up? What if they, extend that olive branch to Russell Wilson by saying, we want to keep you around. We'll get you whatever you want. If you want Odell Beckham Jr., we'll give you Odell Beckham Jr. It all kind of depends on how the rest of the season goes, I think, for the Seahawks, whether Pete Carroll's back, whether Russell Wilson's back. There's certainly a lot of questions there. I would say that probably a 50-50 chance he's still there next year. And that's not like an exact guess. That's not anything technical, but it just seems like there could be a break coming there. And if there is, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if he tries to go to one of the major markets, whether that obviously there's probably not a place for him in LA right now, but maybe the Giants, if that doesn't go well this season with Daniel Jones, maybe another one of the major market teams, just because with Sierra, with Russell Wilson, I think they're trying to raise their profile as much as possible. So yeah, a team like New York would certainly be interesting there.
We are talking to Pro Football Focus NFL reporter Doug Kyed. Now, Doug, you were talking about, obviously, the Buccaneers, and you were talking about the Rams. But we forget about one team that always is talked about in the NFC, and that's the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers, 100% healthy. Obviously, he didn't get his vaccination, so he's going to be missing this week. Could miss another week. But they're 7-1, and they knocked off the Arizona Cardinals, who were the undefeated team. Everybody thought couldn't be beat. They were the best team in all of the NFL before last week. Then Green Bay knocks them off. Aaron Rodgers really plays with nothing. And everybody keeps talking about him. Oh, Tom Brady played with nothing. But Aaron Rodgers has really played with nothing. Devontae Adams, and that's it. I mean, the next best wide receiver he has, he's not even in the top 100 in wide receivers in the NFL. So it just shows you what he does with nothing. Do you think that this could be the year, if this defense and this secondary plays as well as they did last week against a very good Arizona Cardinal team, do you think they could be the favorites of coming out of the NFC and winning a Super Bowl this year?
I'm impressed by the Packers. I just think that it's a really tough NFC. Like, we go through all these teams. Like, any one of these four teams could be the top team in the AFC this year. So it is a really tough conference. I'd still put the Bucs and the Rams probably above the Packers, but they're up there with the Cardinals. They're and obviously they beat the Cardinals, like you said, with a really rough overall receiving core. Not only the wide receivers out, but also Robert Tonyan gets hurt in that game as well. They lose him, so now he's probably dealing without a top tight end for the rest of the season, unless they can scramble on something for waivers or something like that. But yeah, I mean they're right up there as well. It's going to be interesting, I think, with the Packers. We're talking about the Packers right now, to see how Jordan Love plays in this game against the Chiefs. I think it's not the worst spot for him to be in for his starting debut, because I don't think expectations will be that high for him against a Chiefs team. I don't think anyone's really expecting him to keep up with Patrick Mahomes. People will probably be expecting the Chiefs to win that game. The Chiefs defense has been really rough this season. So there's a potential for Jordan Love to look good in this game against the Chiefs. And if that happens, there's some uncertainty next offseason with Aaron Rodgers, if he'll be back in Green Bay next season. And if Jordan Love plays really well against the Chiefs, that might at least, make the Packers feel a little bit better if Aaron Rodgers does leave next season. Obviously, that's a year away. I do think the Packers will be in the running again this season in the playoffs. But that is an interesting side note, that we're going to get to see Jordan Love start this season with everything that's brewing with the Packers over the offseason.